Amen. Let me just tell you a little bit about the handout, because I've already convinced myself we're not getting to the end. Which I always suspected, which is why you have such a big handout, where I've tried to give you some helpful things about every section of the story. Now, at Cornhill, we're obsessed with two sentences. The first sentence is the what sentence. And a what sentence is trying to distill what the central truth the author is teaching in this passage is. Not a summary of the action, but what is the big truth, the big takeaway that we learn from this passage? Out of all the things I could say about this passage, what is the big one, the main one, the overarching one? So we're obsessed with a what sentence. And I am so fussy that I don't just want a what sentence, but I want a what sentence in a very particular way. So the what sentence needs to distill the central truth taught by a passage, and it needs to be written in 14 words or less in the indicative mood. That is, it needs to be written as a statement of truth. That is our first sentence. The second sentence is the why sentence, which is, what is the central response being called for by this author from this people as he told them this story? Why is this author writing this particular story to these particular people? What's the hope? So in my house, I will often get a text message, or on a bad day, a phone message from my wife saying, "You forgot to take the bins out again this morning." Now, my wife is not telling me that because she thinks, I just like to know random information. You forgot to take the bins out. Isaac's washing still hasn't been done. The dinner bowls are still in the sink. It's not part of that. Nor do I think she particularly likes the cadence of the words. You forgot to take the bins out this morning. Like, we have Apple Music. We don't need to make our own tunes in our house. She is telling me that information because she wants to provoke a response in me. You forgot to take the bins out again this morning. The response, don't you dare do that again. The kitchen is stinking. And you know where the bin store is, so when you get home, before you take your shoes off, tie it up, bag it up, take it out, never want to see it again. She is giving me the information because she's provoking a response in me. Same with the Bible, though not about the bins. This central truth is to do something in the lives, hearts of the readers. And because I am fussy, a why sentence is not just free form. It needs to be written in 14 words or less in the imperative mood, therefore as a command. Some of the Cornhillers who have been doing this for years, this is the first time they've ever understood what on earth I'm talking about. The rest of them are still in the dark. Not only do I want it 14 words or less written in the imperative mood, but I want it to be fronted with a verb. So, know, understand, think. It might be something that I'm caused to understand, something that I'm called to do, something that I'm called to know, or some particular application response that I'm supposed to think of. Therefore, in your handout, for every section of 1 Samuel, as I've cut it up, you'll see in green writing there is a what sentence and a why sentence. Let me tell you what those are and what those aren't. That is my best effort thus far. I am not standing here saying that this is the what sentence to 1 Samuel chapter 1. That is way above my pay grade. I am saying that the work that I've done, this is as good as I've got it, as sharp as I've got it, as clear as I've got it to this point. And I've given them to you not so you can just copy and paste and take 1 Samuel sermons off the shelf and just deliver them verbatim, But I've given them to you as a starter for 10. And when you preach 1 Samuel, I want your what and why sentences to be much better than mine. And using mine to get you to yours is a really good thing. So I will be disappointed if I come to your church and hear you preach 1 Samuel 8 and go, that sounds familiar. That's almost word for word what I did. I would like to go, that's what 1 Samuel 8 is about. If only I'd known that when I was giving it a shot. So it's not here as a sort of fait accompli. It is here as some way to sort of spur you and move you forward as you set about understanding and teaching the Bible. We are never saying there is the what sentence. There is such a thing as a wrong what sentence and a wrong why sentence. That is completely off to the side of what the Bible is saying. But then we're on a spectrum of fine, good, better, even better, really good, should probably write a commentary. That's the sort of, so nobody is saying there is one definitive what sentence, but we're all trying to get it better and sharper. Okay, let's open the Bible. That would be a good idea. 1 Samuel chapter 1 is written in the sheet for you. (1 Samuel chapter 1), there was a man of Ramathaim Zophim, of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zoph, an Ephrathite. He had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man used to go up year by year from his city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? And why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? After they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat before the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth moving. Hannah was speaking in her heart. Only her lips moved and her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli took her to be a drunken woman. And Eli said to her, How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you. But Hannah answered, No, my lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. Then Eli answered, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him. And she said, Let your servant find favor in your eyes. Then the woman went on her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. They rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord. Then they went back to their house at Ramah, and Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Samuel, for she said, I have asked for him from the Lord. The man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice, and to pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever. Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him, only may the Lord establish his word. So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine. And she brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. And the child was young. Then they slaughtered the bull, and they brought the child to Eli. And she said, "Oh, my Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who was standing here in your presence praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord had granted me my petition that I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord." And he worshipped the Lord there. You have to think what an abnormal story 1 Samuel 1 is on the back of Judges. Judges, you have entire societal disintegration. Civil war is happening. Anarchy reigns. Everyone is doing what is right in the eyes of the Lord. That's where we finished the unfolding story. And 1 Samuel begins with zooming in to a seemingly quite important family, because Elkanah has quite a long son of. So he's a man of renown, but nobody's ever heard of him. And he comes from Ramathaim-Zophim. Now, where is that? Exactly. It's like the Cowden Beath of the Bible. No one quite knows where it is, but everyone's pretty sure they don't want to visit even if they could. And so on the back of societal disintegration, you zoom into one family who's unknown, and you think, what on earth is the Lord up to? How have we moved from a national crisis to zooming into one family that seemed to come from left field? There's other things here that would cause you to be very, very afraid. There was a certain man. Well, we heard that before. That's exactly how Samson's nativity story started. There was a certain man, Manoah, and we all thought, let's not have another one of those. That seems like a terrible idea. It seemed like Samson was a judge on steroids. We don't want Samson on steroids as the next version, the 13th judge. And we also learn that it's a dysfunctional family, that Elkanah has 2 wives, and they don't like each other. Peninnah is a constant irritant to Hannah. And what is it particularly about? Well, it's Peninnah has got lots of sons and daughters, and Hannah has none. And so it seems like a very little story, but do you see that it's a microcosm of the national story? That there's a family where there's civil war going on, and the backdrop is the nation is at civil war. And so perhaps what happens in this little family might have ramifications for the nation as a whole. We're going to do people a disservice if we just think that this is a soap opera zooming into life in Ramathaim-Zophim. This story is very deliberate because this little family is a microcosm of the big thing. But we've got another ingredient which fills us full of hope. We have a barren woman. And let's remember, we've read Genesis. And whenever barren women start enlisting in NCT courses, our antennas start twitching, because it seems that one of the programmed moves of the Lord is supernaturally to give barren women a child as the dial of redemption history clicks forward a notch. And so the fact that we have Hannah gives us real hope. And Elkanah, bless him, he seems to be a faithful Israelite. He seems to really like going to Shiloh to worship the Lord and offering sacrifices. He's a bit emotionally unintelligent. That Hannah, who's refusing to eat, she gives him a double portion. I mean, that seems quite insensitive at the dinner table to pile it high as she sits there bawling her eyes out. And then also, I mean, what a claim. Am I not more to you than 10 sons? I mean, that's quite the thing. Why are you crying? You've got me. What more could you possibly want? Well-meaning, well-intentioned, I think a faithful Israelite, but maybe a little bit clueless and potentially a cause for the dysfunction. I think there's also a sense, isn't there, that we're very much in the line of Jacob. We've got sort of very Jacob-y vibes. We've got 2 wives. It's quite a new thing. You've got one wife who seems to be reproducing at scale, and you've got another wife who is barren, and that makes us think of Jacob and his two wives because Laban does the switcheroo. So we seem to have the ingredients here of patterns that are already in existence. And one year, Hannah has had it up to here, and she goes to the temple, the tent in Shiloh, and she prays before the Lord. And one of the things we discover here is that the spiritual leadership of Israel is seemingly at an all-time low. Because Eli cannot distinguish between somebody who is pouring out their heart in prayer and somebody who's been pouring out the buckfast long into the night. He can't distinguish between heartfelt prayer and people that have been on the lash. But after Hannah corrects him, he says, "Go in peace and may the Lord grant your petition." Well, what more could he do? And amazingly, through natural means, this is not immaculate conception in the Christmas story. This is a nativity story about Elkanah and his wife Hannah going home, Elkanah knowing his wife, the Lord remembering her covenantally, and her conceiving and in due course having a son, whom she calls Samuel. "I have asked the Lord for him." And nativities in the Bible are very rare. Samson has a nativity, Isaac has a nativity, Jacob and Esau have a nativity. David has a nativity, but not really a nativity of his ancestor Obed rather than him. So that's quite unusual. And Jesus has a nativity. And it does seem to be something that we're being told very early on, that for a nation in crisis that is disintegrating before its very eyes, the Lord's seeming move in such circumstances is for a woman from the back of beyond to have a baby. Nobody's thinking that that is going to be the most significant thing going on in Israel at the time that Elkanah and Hannah and Peninnah are going to Shiloh. I mean, it's so pathetic, isn't it? The answer to a world in crisis is a woman from nowhere having a baby. It's quite a long-term strategy. It's going to be maybe a couple of decades before they're even sort of competent to do anything. And then there's quite a long way from sort of an unknown family in Ramathaim Zophim to have any sort of control over a whole nation and be in the corridors of power. And yet, isn't that just the way that the Lord works? That what is his answer to all the problems that we see in a world? Well, a woman from the back of beyond, somewhere like maybe Nazareth. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Turns out one thing really good can come from Nazareth. Absolute world-changing. Aren't we just encouraged, even before we've properly met Samuel, that the Lord seems to have a set pattern that he's teaching his people, that the answer to all the world's problems is a baby born to seemingly humble nobody people in the back of beyond? Well, I don't know what you're doing for Christmas at your church, but 1 Samuel 1 would probably go quite well. To give people a rest from the shepherds and the angels and Away in a Manger, the docetistic carol that we probably shouldn't sing. Sing Away in a Manger. Please don't let the thing you take away from here be, don't sing Away in a Manger. Please sing Away in a Manger. If you change the words to some crying he makes, I'd be happier. Because to say no crying he makes seems to suggest that he wasn't human. And human babies cry, I'm told. And therefore some crying he makes would be. I'll leave it up to you. You're all trained professionals. The answer to the world's problems is a baby born to a family from the back of beyond. But don't miss what happens in the second half of the story. That's really good news, but I think we have a thing happening on the other side. So the Lord has been faithful to his side of the vow that Hannah has made. The big question is, will Hannah be faithful to her side of the bargain? The deal really was, if you give me a child, I'll give him back to you to serve you all the days of his life. And now here she is in Ramathaim Zophim. Little Samuel's asleep in the Moses basket. Elkanah and Peninnah are out the door to do their sacrificial thing. And Hannah says, I'm not coming. I'm going to stay here. Everyone's a bit nervous because that's exactly the way that Israel have been throughout the duration of their time in the Promised Land. The Lord has been so faithful to his covenant, so faithful. He has blessed them, put up with them, given them all good things. And they have not been keeping their end of the bargain. And do you see that though it is a little story, it's actually the very big story? And will Hannah be a faithful Israelite and keep up her end of the bargain? Well, it is with a great sigh of relief that sometime down the track, once the boy is weaned, she takes him and she gives him to Eli. I think the only actual dedication in the Bible, when people say, can you dedicate my child? I don't think anyone's thinking, over to you. We'll see you once a year and bring a new uniform. When people used to ask me at Brunsfield, could I dedicate their child? I was like, no, I can hardly look after myself. I'm not looking to take on other responsibilities. Good, we're fighting Christmas carols and church practices. It's good. Thanks for coming. Yes, and Samuel is inserted into the priestly family, and suddenly we've had somebody moving from the fringe to the center of Israelite life. And so my what sentence was, God hears and helps helpless people by bringing hope in a son. I think that would preach. I think that what sentence, what I've tried to do is make it true for them then and true for us now. And obviously, there's an ability to see that that is both what God has done for Hannah through Samuel, what God has done for Israel through Samuel, but also what God has done for us ultimately and teleologically in the Lord Jesus. And so what are we doing? We're trusting the Lord in his sovereign plan to prosper his people through a son. It's good, isn't it? It's good for us to be reminded of, because I don't know if you watch the news, probably do. It's not good news, is it? It seems to be more fragile and chaotic than ever. And the thing that 1 Samuel 1 reminds us of is there's eternal hope. Why? Because somebody from the back of beyond had an unexpected baby who turns out to be the hope of the whole world. Sort of counterintuitive, isn't it? It's wonderful good news. And 1 Samuel 1 turns out to be the real deal. Hannah then sings a song, which you're going to look at now. Let me read it for us, and then I want you to turn in for 4 minutes with your neighbor. What is the big thing this passage is about? One thing to remind you of. Hannah looks like Elizabeth, as in Luke chapter 1 Elizabeth, but she talks like Mary. And we're going to have to be okay with that. And I'll explain more on the other side. 1 Samuel chapter 2. And Hannah prayed and said, my heart exalts in the Lord, my horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him are actions weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble bind on strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. The barren has borne 7, but she who has many children is forlorn. The Lord kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked shall be cut off in darkness, for not by might shall a man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Against them he will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. 4 minutes with your neighbor. What do you notice? What do you see? What is interesting? What's unusual? Just highlight something. That would be great. It's not that it doesn't apply to Hannah and Peninnah. I mean, I'm sure when she comes out with the phrase, the barren has borne 7, but she who has many is forlorn, I think it's like one of those prayer meetings where you're conscious there's a bit of tension and you bring up a matter for prayer. I think we should pray for Julie, because she is horrible. But it is obviously way bigger. That we start with a woman rejoicing in a baby, and we end with the Lord exalting a king. And we're nowhere near that. Really good. What else do we notice? Super reversals. It's the whole thing of it being turned upside down, isn't it? So strong things are being brought low. People that are full end up hungry. People who are hungry end up full. Kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and he raises up. There's no more greater extreme than life to death and death to life. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low, he exalts. What is this song about? It's about the reversals of the Lord. It's about the Lord working counterintuitively in the world to the way that the world works. So especially in our world and always in the world, we think the might is right. And the dogs with the biggest teeth get the biggest dinners. And it turns out that the way the Lord works is completely counterintuitively. He rejoices in low, humble things, winning the day while the people who were odds-on favourites end up languishing at the back. And that's great to know, isn't it? I mean, that is great to know. That despite what things look like by sight, the reality by faith is radically different. And even in a world when it looks like the world is winning and the wicked are prospering, that it's guaranteed because of the ways and the works of the Lord that there is a flip reversal in eternity coming. And the low and the humble are the ones that will win the day. This song, as with so many songs in the Bible, actually gives us the theological moorings through which to understand the whole book. So whenever people in the Bible act like they were in a Gilbert and Sullivan musical, it is time to really tune in, because so often the song is the theological key that unlocks the whole book. That happens in Exodus 15, doesn't it? When they're on the other side of the sea and Moses sings a song and Miriam gets her tambourine out. Why she does that, nobody knows. Nobody's ever knows why somebody gets a tambourine out, but they do invariably. But that song of the sea is the entire theological story of all that the Lord is doing in the Exodus. He rescued them out of Egypt in order to reveal his name, in order that he might dwell with them. All there in the different bits of that song. This song is the theological moorings through which we need to understand the whole book. Here's the summary for you, and it's in those red things. What is this song about in a nutshell? Tall things fall, but low things grow. And it rhymes, which means that it's definitely true. Tall things fall, but low things grow. And that's absolutely true of the book, isn't it? Who is tall in 1 Samuel who falls? Saul. Oh, go right at the end. Fair enough. We've gone 1 Samuel 28 through a hyperlink. Who else is tall who falls? Goliath. Who else is tall that falls? You didn't read it as much as you thought you did in preparation for this. Dagon, thank you. Thank you. Being tall in the Bible, in 1 Samuel, potentially in the whole Bible, is not a good thing. Particularly if it's not just about altitude, but is it about pride and exalting yourself. It's almost like one of the truths that runs from Genesis right the way through to Revelation is that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. The only people who will not receive grace from the Lord are people that don't think they need it. And that is exactly what 1 Samuel is teaching us. Tall things fall, but low things grow. And it's interesting, isn't it? How did an unknown woman from a backwater place learn to pray like 1 Samuel 2? Have you ever thought that? You have now, and it's all you're going to be thinking about the rest of the day. How does Hannah know how to pray like Hannah does? Well, the answer is this is an original work for Hannah. She's just ripping off Moses' song in Deuteronomy 32. She actually just pulls some of the lines and focuses it in on her individual experience. Hannah's great in a Bible study. She knows things. And she's learned to pray by listening to Moses. How does Mary know how to pray the Magnificat? Well, because she knows 1 Samuel and she knows Deuteronomy 32. They're just remixes of pre-existing songs. So what do we learn on the back of 1 Samuel 2? That we can really trust the Lord to bring about ultimate justice in the end. It means we don't need to seek revenge. There is a theology of revenge, but it's not at our hand. The Lord will ensure that pride-filled, mighty people who have oppressed and abused others will, in the end, be judged. And people who remain humble will continue to prosper and grow. It says we can really trust the Lord. It tells us we should beware of being tall and puffing ourselves up. Why do you talk? Talk no more so very proudly, or literally talk no more so very high. Don't be puffing yourself up, but remain low. And it will go well for you because you'll continue to be blessed and nourished by the Lord Jesus. And doesn't it again help us with Christmas? Because let's be clear, nobody was expecting the long-awaited promised Messiah to be born in a stable in Bethlehem. And yet on the back of Hannah's prayer, we should go, well, of course that's right. That's just the sort of thing that this God would do to his ultimate king, who will be exalted as the anointed one. It's a good song. Be good to sing on the way home. And this is where we've got to be careful, because Hannah's story is Elizabeth, a barren woman who's married and has obviously been married for a long time but has not been able to have children. That's not to say Zechariah had another secret wife somewhere. We've got to be prepared to have sort of messy typology. And of course, Samuel is not the Jesus figure, though he does lots of righteous good things, which can be part of our collage. But he is the kingmaker, so he's more like John the Baptist. So that line seems to be Hannah, Samuel, Elizabeth, John the Baptist. Samuel is David's hype man, in the way that John the Baptist is Jesus' hype man, the preparer to prepare the people for the one that they've been prepared for. But interestingly, Hannah speaks like Mary, and we've just got to be cool with that. So if I'm preaching 1 Samuel 1 or doing it in a Bible study, I think week 1 we're going to see this happen again, where a barren woman has a son, because the prayers of Zechariah have been answered by the Lord. But week 2 we're probably going to do much more Hannah's song to the Magnificat, and maybe back to Deuteronomy 32 if we're young and athletic. And we've got to be cool with that. We've got to be sort of nimble and flexible and be able to do these sort of things. I've drawn you a graph, which is the way to kill any sort of Bible study. Interesting to know, in 1 Samuel, somebody is always on the way down and somebody's always on the way up. So at the beginning, Eli's on the way down and Samuel is on the way up. And Samuel stays pretty good. And do you see that little dot there? That's because he dies, but then he makes a guest appearance in the cave of the Witch of Endor. Saul goes up and then quickly comes down, and David goes up, has a little blip, and then keeps going up. So think about movement. It's almost like the entire theological undergirding is tall things falling and low things growing. So you would expect that sort of movement if Hannah's song is real. The end of chapter 2, then, we get further insight into the spiritual temperature of Israel. And we realize that Eli hasn't covered himself in glory in chapter 1, and it turns out the plot thickens because his two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are absolutely appalling. They're sleeping with the faithful worshippers. They're stealing what belongs to the Lord, taking of the devoted things, almost like mini Acans. I like to think of, I won't say that. That is not going to help anybody. Got to self-edit sometimes. But notice that the end of chapter 2 is not chiastic, but it's A, B, A, B, A, B. So over against the decline of Eli and his household and their appalling behavior, we have little snippets about the boy Samuel growing, and Hannah visiting Samuel and bringing him a new ephod so his ephod doesn't turn into a miniskirt as he gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so do you see that even in the way that this is written, we've got the decline of Eli and his priesthood with the growth and development of Samuel. Interestingly, in Samuel, succession is through adoption, not through lineage. So Eli's priesthood is going to be continued not through Hophni and Phinehas, who are both going to die on the same day as their father. That's going to continue through Samuel, who's been adopted into their house. And then Saul is going to become as a son to Samuel. So after his anointing, when he starts prophesying, who do they say? Is Saul among the prophets, and who is their father? Well, it's Samuel. And do you see Saul has been grafted into Samuel's line to overtake him? Samuel has been the judge, prophet, priest of Israel, and now that's going to be superseded by a king. Who's going to take over from Saul? Well, it's sadly not going to be Jonathan. It's going to be David, who's been adopted into his family, firstly through his marriage to Michal or Michael, or however you say Michal, in a way that makes it sound feminine. That's how the end of chapter 2 works. Eli and his sons going from bad to worse. Samuel going from strength to strength. Then we come into chapter 3, and this is chiastic, which makes us exceptionally happy. One of us, at least. Do you see how it's a resolution? Chapter 3, verse 1. And the word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no frequent vision. And do you see at the beginning of chapter 4, which is the end, and the word of the Lord and the word of Samuel came to all Israel. We've gone from no word to the word being available to everyone. How does that happen? Through the prophetic calling of Samuel to be the prophet of the Lord. It's through the establishing of a prophet. We all know this story, don't we? That Samuel goes to sleep. He hears the Lord calling, but thinks it's Eli and runs through. Again, Eli doesn't cover himself in glory. It's at the fourth time of asking that he goes. Got an inkling what might be happening. If it happens again, say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And the first test that the prophet Samuel undergoes is God has fully disclosed to him the curse that is going to fall on Eli and his household. And so in the morning when Eli calls Samuel and says, "Tell me everything," if I was Samuel, I'd go, "Well, it was a little bit unclear. Do you know? I just wouldn't lean back in your chair too much." But what does it say? Verse 18, so Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. And that's what you really want in a prophet of the Lord, somebody who's going to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And Samuel passes with flying colors. Now understand, this is a descriptive story, not a nominative story. Therefore, I think we're doing people a disservice if you encourage them that going to sleep on Sunday night, they're going to hear the Lord calling them. However, it is very subjectivized, I think. And you've got to be careful to teach it clearly that this is a description of what happens, not a prescription of what we can all expect to happen. But you want to do it in such a way that you're clear, but also generous. So people who think of very clear moments in their lives where they felt the Lord was impressing upon them certain things, you're not driving roughshod over that whole thing. You have to be pastorally sensitive. And finding a way to be nimble and generous, to be very clear, but also to not leave people thinking that they're somehow fraudulent or some of the key landmarks in their lives were somehow illegitimate. That's just really helpful. The first time I ever preached 1 Samuel 3, that was the conversation I had with the woman at the door who felt like she had been called to do something in her life that was very costly and dangerous. And she did it because she felt the Lord impressing it upon her as she fell asleep at night. And I think I'd done it in such a foolhardy, reckless way that she left questioning whether that was even true. And it had definitely changed the trajectory of her whole life. So you have to be very sensitive. And just because it's not to be expected doesn't mean that the sovereign Lord can call people in the middle of the night. And he can, and he does. But it doesn't mean we should set that as an expectation for everybody in our congregation as they go to bed on Sunday morning. Good. Well, chapter 4, it's a baddie. It is a really bad chapter where it seems like there's sort of very, very little hope. The Philistines come to town. Samuel disappears. Chapter 4, verse 1, Samuel is established as the prophet of the Lord. He doesn't reappear again until 1 Samuel 7, verse 2. It turns out if you silence the word of the Lord, it might not go well for you. And so they draw up for lines, but rather than honoring the Lord, praying to the Lord, trusting the Lord, sacrificing to the Lord, thinking that in God's economy, low things grow, but tall things fall, they puff themselves up, they put their armor on, and they get the ark out like it was some sort of four-leaf clover or magic rabbit's foot, and they roll it out into town after they suffered defeat in the first skirmish. And it doesn't go well. They lose 5 times more people. And the thing that Samuel is told that will make all the ears of everybody tingle happens, which is that the ark of the Lord goes into exile. The worst day imaginable. The day that is an existential crisis to your national life. The only thing that sets you apart from all the other nations is the truth that your God dwells with you. Symbolized by the ark, and he's not there anymore. He's now gone to Ekron and Gath and Ashdod and Ashkelon. It's the worst, worst, worst day imaginable. And it kills Eli. That when the messenger runs from the battlefield and says the ark has been captured, he falls off his chair and he breaks his neck because he was very fat. And actually, we felt quite sorry for Eli. We felt that, he's doing his best job. There's a lot of spiritual decline. He's sort of told his sons to stop doing what they're doing. But this is the big reveal. Because Eli has got very, very fat. How has he got very fat? Because he's been eating the fat portions. It's almost like I imagine it like this. They're sitting around the dinner table. And Eli is just saying to Hophni and Phinehas, you need to stop that. But it's so muffled because he's got a prime ribeye in his mouth as he cuts the next bit and the next bit. And there's an intricate wordplay in this whole section because the word heavy is also the word glory. So at the end of the chapter, when they call the baby Ichabod, where is the glory? It could be, where is the weight? And the answer is it's round Eli's tummy, because he has been eating it. He has been stealing glory from the Lord. And it has brought about his death, and obviously Hophni and Phinehas have died just in the way that it was always predicted to happen. Samuel is told that there will be a faithful priesthood who overtakes Eli's house, and that is not actually the end of Eli's house. It will sort of continue, and the big move will come in 1 Kings chapter 1 when Eli's priestly family is replaced by Zadok's priestly family. Is there any hope in 1 Samuel 4? It seems pretty hopeless. You've had 1 birth and 3 deaths, which sounds like a terrible Richard Curtis movie. And the ark has gone into exile, which is the worst thing imaginable to happen. You have lost God. Well, I think if we were really, really clued up on our Old Testament, we would go, this is unexpected. And I think it is unexpected in this way. That in the curses of Leviticus 26 and the curses of Deuteronomy 28, but particularly Leviticus 26, there has a sliding scale of curses that the Lord will bring about to discipline his people in order to bring them back to fidelity and obedience to the Lord. The penultimate rung on the ladder is you will be defeated in battle. The final rung on the ladder is that you will be exiled and scattered among the nations. So if we think about it, on the back of 1 Samuel 4, Israel have just been defeated in battle. The next thing that should happen is that the people, God's people, go into exile. But what actually happens is that God goes into exile, not the people. And isn't that astonishing? It's almost like one of the things that the Lord is teaching us in this very dark chapter of 1 Samuel 4 is about substitution. And that the Lord is just grooving in us this idea that sometime down the line, there might be one who takes on the curse on behalf of his people. We all expect it is the people who go into exile, well, the ark stays put. But what actually happens is the ark goes into exile and the people stay put. The Lord shares the humiliation and the shame and the punishment and the curse that rightfully belong to the people. I think that's pretty cool. Alone, seemingly. But do you see, against the backdrop of 1 Samuel 4 and all the horrific things that happen, that shines so beautifully at the end because the backdrop is so dark, and yet the jewel of what is happening shines so brightly. Everyone happy? Should be. That's a really, really cool thing. What happens next in 5, 6, and 7 is quite comical. I'd like to read it. It's quite long. But, if we're going to fill the room with anything, it may as well be these words. I'm going to read chapter 5. Simon, you're going to read chapters 6 to 7, which I've told you about just now. Okay. When the Philistines captured the ark of God, they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it into the house of Dagon and set it up beside Dagon. And when the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, behold, Dagon had fallen face downward on the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him back in his place. But when they rose early on the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen face down on the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off on the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. This is why the priests of Dagon and all who enter the house of Dagon do not tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. The hand of the Lord was heavy against the people of Ashdod, and he terrified and afflicted them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territory. And when the men of Ashdod saw how things were, they said, the ark of God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is hard against us and against Dagon our God. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, "What shall we do with the ark of God, the God of Israel?" They answered, "Let the ark of the God of Israel be brought around to Gath." So they brought the ark of the God of Israel there. But after they had brought it around, the hand of the Lord was against the city, causing a very great panic, and he afflicted the men of the city, both young and old, so that tumors broke out on them. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. But as soon as the ark of God came to Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, "They have brought around to us the ark of the God of Israel to kill us and our people." They sent therefore and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, "Send away the ark of the God of Israel, and let it return to its own place, that it may not kill us and our people." For there was a deathly panic throughout the whole city. The hand of God was very heavy there. The men who did not die were struck with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven.
The ark of the Lord was in the country of the Philistines 7 months. And the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners and said, "What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us with what we shall send it to its place." They said, "If you send away the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it empty, but by all means return him a guilt offering. Then you will be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand does not turn away from you." And they said, "What is the guilt offering that we shall return to him?" They answered, 5 golden tumors and 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines. For the same plague was on all of you and on your lords. So you must make images of your tumors and images of your mice that ravage the land, and give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand from off you and your gods and your land. Why should you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? After he had dealt severely with them, did they not send the people away, and they departed? Now then, take and prepare a new cart and 2 milk cows on which there has never come a yoke, and yoke the cows to the cart, but take their calves home away from them. And take the ark of the Lord and place it on the cart, and put it in a box at its side, the figures of gold, which you are returning to him as a guilt offering. Then send it off and let it go its way, and watch. If it goes up on the way to its own land, to Beth Shemesh, then it is he who has done us this great harm. But if not, then we shall know that it is not his hand that struck us. It happened to us by coincidence." The men did so, and took 2 milk cows and yoked them to the cart, and shut up their calves at home. And they put the ark of the Lord on the cart, and the box with the golden mice and the images of their tumors. And the cows went straight in the direction of Beth Shemesh along one highway, lowing as they went. They turned neither to the right nor to the left, and the lords of the Philistines went after them as far as the border of Beth Shemesh. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley, and when they lifted up their eyes and saw the ark, they rejoiced to see it. The cart came into the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh and stopped there. A great stone was there, and they split up the wood of the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. And the Levites took down the ark of the Lord and the box that was beside it, in which were the golden figures, and set them upon the great stone. And the men of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and sacrificed sacrifices on that day to the Lord. And when the 5 lords of the Philistines saw it, they returned that day to Ekron. These are the golden tumors that the Philistines returned as a guilt offering to the Lord. 1 for Ashdod, 1 for Gaza, 1 for Ashkelon, 1 for Gath, and 1 for Ekron. And the golden mice, according to the number of all the cities of the Philistines belonging to the 5 lords, both fortified cities and unwalled villages. The great stone beside which they set down the ark of the Lord is a witness to this day in the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh. And he struck some of the men of Beth Shemesh because they looked upon the ark of the Lord. He struck 70 men of them, and the people mourned because the Lord had struck the people with a great blow. Then the men of Beth Shemesh said, "Who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God? And to whom shall he go up away from us? So they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath-Jearim, saying, "The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to you." And the men of Kiriath-Jearim came and took up the ark of the Lord and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill. And they consecrated his son Eleazar to have charge of the ark of the Lord. From the day that the ark was lodged at Kiriath-Jearim, a long time passed, some 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord.
Get into Philistine pagan mindsets. So what do you do if you win a victory? You place the trophies from the war in the temple of your God. And so the Ark of the Covenant is placed in the temple of Dagon as some sort of trophy, trash-talking Yahweh and showing that Dagon is stronger. But it just so happens that the Ark of the Lord is more like a Trojan horse. And it is not Yahweh who is captive to Dagon, but Yahweh who is Dagon's conqueror. And the pagan priests of Dagon are slow on the uptake. Rather than see the supremacy of Yahweh, they instead go, "That's had Dagon's head on it. It would be good not to touch that. Let's pole vault into church on whatever day you worship Dagon in the temple of Dagon." They had opportunity. The Lord is revealing who he is, and yet the people harden their hearts and go the other way. And then what should happen is after the trophy of your victory is placed in the temple, you then go on some sort of victory parade through your whole territory, like an open-top bus parade, after you've won, I don't know, the women's Euros or something. You go on an open-top bus parade so everyone can join in the victory. Well, know that there is a triumphant parade that the ark goes on, but it's a triumphant parade afflicting and dominating the Philistines. And do you see that what we have before us is the Exodus in microcosm? What is the Lord doing behind enemy lines? He is striking the Philistines with plagues. He is revealing who he is. He is revealing his heaviness, his glory. And it turns out for the Philistines, he's too hot to handle. And so they play this game of pass the parcel, but nobody wants to open the wrapper. And they get tumors. This is where the commentators will largely not help you. The phrase of the guilt offering gets people thinking that this is the Lord on some sort of evangelistic crusade. They've got it. They haven't. They're pagans. And what do you do if you're a pagan? Well, you're invested in sympathetic magic. So your worldview is the gods are powerful, but they're a bit slow on the uptake. They don't have much in the way of intuition. That's why our favorite story, Elijah on the top of Mount Carmel having a barbecue competition, why the priests of Baal cut themselves. Why? Because they've been praying and dancing and doing all their sort of Baal type stuff, but Baal seems completely unbothered. So what do they start doing? They start cutting themselves. Why? Well, because blood is red and fire is red. And so Baal will look down and go, "I get it. They've made it red, they want me to make it red, and it turns out I'm a thunder god, so this should be right in my wheelhouse." What are the pagan Philistines doing behind Philistine territory? Well, they're making golden images of what seemingly is some sort of bubonic plague transmitted by mice, and they're putting them in a box, and what are they doing? They're sending them out of the land. Why? So Dagon, the fish god, will go, "I got it. Your problem is mice and tumors, and you've sent them away. Let me step in and do that for real." Now, I am terrible at art. I was a teacher in Lebanon for 3 years, and they let me teach everything except art, because variations on a stick man turn out not to be sort of a useful job. When it comes to fashioning golden things, mice, well above my pay grade. That is skillful artisan metalwork. Tumors, I'm your guy. You want a metal tumor, I'll make it like that. Get something a bit hot and molten. They send it back. But notice the imagery. The Lord has revealed himself through plagues, afflicting his enemies, revealing what he's like. It's the Exodus. But what happens when the Israelites finally leave Egypt? Well, they do something seemingly quite sneaky, don't they? They go and see all of their neighbors and go, that gold watch you've got, could you lend it to me? Oh, I noticed your chandelier. I've really liked that. I've got some people coming round for dinner. Can I borrow it? And so when they leave, what have they done? They've plundered the Egyptians. They've left Egypt laden with gold. How does the Lord, on his one-man crusade, leave Philistia laden with gold? Do you see it's the Exodus? And it's done in such a way to remind God's people who he really is. And wouldn't it be amazing if you were an exile in Babylon, living in a refugee tent by the Kibar Canal, and you read this amazing story of the sovereign Lord revealing himself, single-handedly conquering all of his enemies before returning to the land? You might go, he might do it again. There might be hope even here, because he did it in Ekron and Ashdod and Ashkelon and Gath. Maybe he'll do it in Babylon. And maybe there really is hope for us. Not because of us, but because of him. I love it as well, because they're real pagans, but they don't want to face the truth. So they do this sort of divination thing. We're going to put the ark on a cart, but we'll sort of load the deck, because we'll get it to be pulled by milking cows who have just had young. I hate cows. In fact, I hate all animals that are bigger than me. And so if you're a new mother heifer and you've just had a baby, don't get in between those two. It will not go well for you. You will be needed with a K, not an N. And so these milking cows are going, and they've got every incentive to stay. And what do? They go straight to Beth Shemesh. And they've read Hannah's song. Because what are they doing is they're lowing all the way. And we know that tall things fall and low things grow. And they're preaching as they go low, 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 low. If that doesn't make it into your sermon, my time has been wasted. But notice there's still a lesson to be learned back in Israel. Because where does the ark end up? It ends up in Beth Shemesh, which is a Levite city. What a providence of the Lord that the place that the ark lands is amongst the very people who should know how to handle it. And yet they don't. They look irreverently, contemptuously on the ark, in the ark, and 70 of them are killed. In some translations, that could be 35,000. That's quite a difference. But they treat the Lord irreverently, just the way they did back in chapter 4 when they thought he was some sort of magic rabbit's foot. And so then where does the ark go? It goes to Kiriath Jearim. Who lives in Kiriath Jearim? Do you know who lives in Kiriath Jearim? The Gibeonites. Do you know those little sneaky ones from Joshua chapter 9? The tribe of the Canaanites who dupe Joshua with the game Trick or Treaty, and they get them to be absorbed into Israel, even though they should have been put under the ban and destroyed. So what does Joshua do? He enlists them in lifelong discipleship explored. And what is their time spent doing? Chopping firewood and carrying water to the tabernacle. Why? So that they will understand the ways and the works of the Lord. They'll understand holiness and sin and sacrifice and atonement and worship. And amazingly, here in 1 Samuel chapter 6 and 7, they've got it. Because the Levites who should have known how to honor the Lord treat him dishonorably. And these people from far left field who shouldn't have a clue, they understand that the Lord is to be prized. And where do they put him? They put him high on a hill. And they honor him. And the ark of the Lord stays there for 20 years. And we read in 1 Chronicles that during that time, this household is truly blessed. Credible. And so that stops us making this an ethnic thing. God loves Israel and hates the Philistines. It's not as easy as that. It's more mixed. He revealed himself to the Philistines, but they wanted not a bar of it. But do you see that the Gibeonites of Kiriath Jearim say he is open and reveals himself to even rank Canaan pagans who trick their way into his kingdom. And he teaches them and sanctifies them, and they're welcome when they understand who he is. It's good, isn't it? Turns out the Bible is full of really good things. There's a hot take for you to go on your way with. 3 minutes to do the rest of chapter 7. Chapter 7 is a repeat of chapter 4. So they're in a similar place. Ebenezer is mentioned in chapter 4. Obviously, Samuel is going to print a big rock with the word Ebenezer, till now the Lord has helped us. And it's totally different. It's not presumptuously trusting in the ark being present. It is sacrifice. It is prayer. It is repentance. It is putting away all of the Baals and the Ashtaroths that they've been accumulating. It is wholeheartedly obeying the Lord in accordance with what Samuel, their mediator, tells them to do. And Samuel, who has been missing since 1 Samuel chapter 4 verse 1, now reappears in 1 Samuel chapter 7 verse 2. He speaks the word of the Lord. The people of the Lord listen. And the Lord wins an astonishing single-handed victory for his people on account of their obedience and devotion. And there's so many similarities between chapter 4 and chapter 7, which it would be so helpful if somebody put it in a table for you. That would really save you quite a lot of time.